Yes, ma'am.
Education. Federal government providing some money to local school districts for mandated programs such as special ed. Tamworth is a small town, and we don't have a big tax base, and education is expensive because we have to do certain programs that are mandated. We now have No Child Left Behind. We have to meet certain standards each year, and I know it's a big problem in the state. They still haven't addressed it for 10 plus years, but the federal government needs to help.
Good point. One of the things that was a priority for me when I looked at the appropriations in Congress that dealt with education, it's called the Labor H budget. I was always working to increase the amount of money that the federal government would allocate to special education funding. Charlie Bass was a leader in that effort. So have Judd Gregg and John Sununu been leaders. In 1996, the federal government reimbursed the states for about 7% of the cost of special education, where the law that implemented special education in the 1970s called for a 40% reimbursement. Because of the efforts of people like Judd, John, and Charlie over the years, and then I helped obviously out too, we're closer to 20% today. Now, we got to get to 40%. It would be a top priority for me. And I was kind of astounded when there was a bill this week that reauthorized higher education programs, that there was a proposal put forward by the Republican leadership to say that no new spending would go into higher education programs until the government had met its underlying mandates for special education. And people on the other side of the aisle voted against that. That's not a vote I would have made. To me, a top priority has got to be special ed funding. And I'll tell you why. I know how important your property taxes are and my property taxes are here in New Hampshire. And that's how we have chosen over the years to fund education. There's a lot of debate about that in New Hampshire, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, that's how we've paid for it, and it is a significant factor in school boards' budgets every year. And to me, I would continue to fight to make it a priority that we fully fund special education. No Child Left Behind. I wasn't in Congress when No Child Left Behind was written and voted for, so I didn't vote for it. Got there, saw some of the problems with No Child Left Behind. Special ed is one. And so I filed legislation that is possible is going to be, other people will take up the mantle and introduce some of the concepts that I brought to the table with regard to No Child Left Behind.
Because it needs to be revamped, definitely.
Well, and here's 3 things that would make the No Child Left Behind law a lot more user-friendly. Number 1, there's a waiver program for special ed students, but it's so narrow that it's very difficult to use. And so a lot of schools are failing based on just a handful of kids that are special needs students. And there's a reason for having a more expanded waiver process. So that was the first thing I provided that would have expanded that. Secondly, if you're a school district that's making progress in terms of meeting what's known as average yearly progress, and I'm sure you know that well, you should be rewarded for that. You shouldn't be thrown into disarray of non-compliance. And if you're making progress, we should give you more time to meet those standards, not penalize you. And so the second thing that my legislation would have done would to have recognized progress. And third, and this probably doesn't affect too many schools here in the Valley or in Tamworth or in the Governor Wentworth Regional School District, but it does in Manchester and it does in Nashua, where there's a large non-English speaking population. Under the current regulations of No Child Left Behind, they have to be tested after 1 year in English. Well, that's not always practical because of kids not learning English fast enough. So the third part of my legislation that I proposed would have given a 2-year window to learn English before requiring a test. So that would have helped schools like Manchester not flunking. And I think that the goals of No Child Left Behind are appropriate to making sure that parents know what teachers are doing and how schools are performing relative to each other. That's a worthy goal. but we've made it so bureaucratic and so difficult and expensive that some common sense solutions are in order. And if I get back into Congress, I'll reintroduce the same legislation, although it may be incorporated already into the reauthorization. I would hope it would be.